Every house became a safe zone against certain death. Limo turned one empty room into endless abundance. Gray mist erased anyone who touched it outside. Night monsters butchered residents behind weak wooden doors. Then his system granted one permanent random affix daily. His first affix could retrieve anything visible, regardless of distance. A photograph was enough for him to steal food. Soon Liang Yun ate hot pot inside his fortified room. The advantage sounded ridiculous until the first loaf appeared in his hand. That single theft proved distance, walls, and ownership meant nothing. Moments earlier, a mechanical voice had transported humanity into a survival game. Limo awakened alone inside a bare room with no bed. One water bottle and a packet of hardtack formed his entire supply reserve. Beyond the open window, gray-white fog swallowed the surrounding residential towers. The familiar city had become a silent maze of apartments and hidden death. A translucent interface divided his vision into chat, trading, storage, and system functions. Golden words above everything demanded that he draw his only starting talent. Before gambling, the cautious survivor opened the guide and studied every rule. Residents could scavenge during daylight, but everyone had to return before darkness. Blueprints, materials, weapons, monster drops, and trades were the only paths toward improvement. Every room required currency and resources before its walls, door or window could evolve. Once darkness arrived, unknown creatures would enter the buildings and hunt exposed survivors. Each player received one permanent talent, with no second draw and no replacement. A countdown showed only minutes remaining before the first deadly night began. Limo activated the draw and immediately triggered repeated analysis failures. Instead of a normal talent, the interface assigned him the random affix system. One new affix would appear every midnight, and every previous affix would remain active. Surviving longer, therefore, meant accumulating abilities with no stated upper limit. His first result was Small Favor, an ability that initially looked almost useless. It allowed 2 daily retrievals of any visible object, regardless of physical distance. Dense fog concealed the outside world, leaving almost nothing useful within ordinary sight. Disappointed but alert, Limo opened the global chat and watched panic spread. A frightened survivor posted a photograph showing bread and water inside another identical room. The image gave Limo an idea the system had never explained. He focused on the photographed bread, and the loaf instantly materialized before him. The distant owner soon reported missing supplies, while strangers dismissed the warning. Limo understood that images extended his sight and transformed Small Favor into theft without range. Voices below interrupted his experiment as skeptical residents approached the gray mist. One reckless man treated the fog like a harmless special effect. The instant his fingers crossed its boundary, an invisible force tore his body apart. His clothing collapsed beside fresh blood, while terrified witnesses fled back indoors. Among the abandoned fabric, several silver coins reflected a faint line of light. Limo used his second retrieval and pulled the blood-stained currency into his palm. The 2 early rewards gave him food, money, and complete confidence in his strange affix. However, the countdown kept falling, and his original door could barely survive a shove. The system revealed that 5 pieces of wood and 2 silver coins could strengthen it. Trading food for timber would preserve his life far better than hoarding one stale loaf. Limo found a starving seller and negotiated 5 pieces of wood for 1 silver coin. Once payment cleared, a hammer icon appeared over the door with a short construction timer. The rotten panel thickened into a scholarly wooden door with twice the original durability. A peephole now allowed him to watch the corridor without exposing himself. Cold air still poured through the completely empty opening where a window should stand. One more inexpensive upgrade created a crude wooden window before darkness arrived. Most neighbors spent their final seconds arguing, praying, or staring at unreinforced doors. Limo instead checked both barriers and placed every remaining resource within reach. When the timer reached 0, the building fell unnaturally quiet. Heavy footsteps climbed from the stairwell, slow enough to make every impact distinct. A hunched horse-faced monster emerged, carrying a giant blood-soaked cleaver. Its first strike buried the blade deeply inside an ordinary resident's door. Screams ended beneath tearing wood and flesh while the creature moved toward another room. A combat talent user rushed outside, struck once, and barely damaged the monster. The creature seized him, proving courage without preparation was only a faster death. Limo remained behind his upgraded barrier and measured every blow instead of panicking. Even repeated cleaver strikes removed only a fraction of his door's durability. His room had already become the safest place on the floor. Only a few residents had upgraded their doors, including the person directly opposite him. The moment the countdown hit 0, the constant chatter in the chat channel noticeably quieted. A hunched humanoid monster stepped into Limo's view. Its spine curved sharply, and it gripped a blood-drenched giant cleaver. Inside their rooms, every resident heard the dull footsteps. One young woman trembled violently, bracing herself against her door and whispering frantic prayers. The monster halted directly before an unupgraded wooden door and raised its cleaver. A shrill scream erupted from the room. The monster let out an eerie cackle and struck faster and faster. Within seconds, the door splintered completely. Soon, a second door collapsed. Limo gripped the doorknob tightly, silently, praying his upgraded door could hold. The third door had been reinforced. The monster hacked at it over a dozen with no success. It roared in frustration and lumbered toward the next household. Just then, a fourth door flew open. He struck the monster's back. He spun to retreat inside his room, but it was too late. The monster lifted the failed combat specialist by his neck, proving talent alone could not close the gap. Even a combat talent barely slowed the creature. While more doors collapsed beneath its advance, the stench of blood seeped through the door panels. The monster observed the room for several seconds before lifting its cleaver and striking again and again. The wooden door shook violently. A level 2 door could hold against this monster. The monster hacked away for a long while before realizing it could not break through. He was about to open the chat channel when the door opposite suddenly swung open. She stabbed the monster in its back as it turned away. The woman saw the monster prepare to spin around and darted back into her room immediately. Droplets of green blood dripped from the creature's wound. The monster could be injured. The monster's furious roar echoed through the entire floor, and its giant cleaver crashed repeatedly against the woman's door. She regretted her reckless attack. She had hoped to ambush the monster with her dagger and claim rewards, relying on her talent that masked her presence. She had not expected the beast to have such a massive amount of health. Limo watched everything unfold from behind his door, completely indifferent to intervening. He wanted to test exactly how many strikes a level 2 door could endure. At that moment, a system notification sounded inside his head. Today's AFFIX has refreshed. Dim-witted companion consumed spirit power to summon a random animal ally. He watched the monster swing its cleaver relentlessly, then glanced at his newly restored skill charges. The wooden door creaked and shuddered beneath the monster's relentless assault. Cold sweat soaked Chen Yao's back as she braced against the panel. Chen Yao's heart raced in a direct confrontation. She would not survive 3 blows if the door broke. Death awaited her. She held her breath and pressed against the door, listening for several long seconds. Only the monster's ragged, heavy breathing remained outside. Confused, Chen Yao crept up to the peephole. She saw the monster that had been battering her door standing rigidly in place. Chen Yao stared in shock. The monster's weapon was gone. Sharp cleaver level 2. Limo admired the weapon's stats. Small Favor had transformed a seemingly harmless retrieval trick into a perfect method for disarming enemies. As for rushing out right now to slay the monster for rewards, he never even considered it. Limo finally understood how Small Favor became lethal when used against an armed enemy. However, he only possessed 1 spirit point, and he wondered what kind of creature he would summon. Rather than risk a direct fight, he stored the stolen cleaver and examined his newly refreshed AFFIX. The new AFFIX summoned Cross-Eyed Mouse, a foolish animal companion that always reversed every instruction. The summoned animal understood language, but perversely performed the opposite of every command it received. Looking at the dazed, wandering rat on the floor, Limo's eyes suddenly lit up. The monster was still a short distance away, relentlessly hammering the wooden door. Its full attention was fixed on the door panel. Completely oblivious to movement near its feet, coins and materials remained scattered beneath corpses and inside rooms that Limo could not safely enter. Dawn was approaching, so every useful object had to be collected before the corridor changed again. He opened the door, only wide enough for Cross-Eyed Mouse to slip into the hallway. By phrasing every order in reverse, Limo directed the strange companion toward abandoned valuables. The creature disappeared for several tense minutes while the disarmed monster battered Chen Yao's reinforced door. Cross-eyed Mouse finally returned, carrying one silver coin between its teeth. That tiny success proved the foolish summon could become a remarkably effective scavenger. Trip after trip, it crossed the bloody corridor while the monster remained completely unaware. By dawn, the exhausted rat had recovered currency, timber, and several valuable pieces of iron. Those materials gave Li Mo enough resources to strengthen his entrance immediately. The upgraded level 3 iron gate possessed enough durability to stop ordinary creatures completely. Running his hand across the cold metal, Li Mo felt his room become a genuine fortress. Morning chat revealed that several combat specialists had actually killed monsters and received blueprint drops. Li Mo respected their potential, yet their dangerous victories only made his safer method look smarter. One survivor posted a photograph of an ordinary toilet blueprint obtained from a monster. Small Favor pulled the blueprint directly from the image and placed it inside Li Mo's hands. The theft confirmed that photographed objects remained valid targets even after the original image was saved. Using 2 silver coins, he traded for 10 pieces of iron on the trade platform. He noticed resource prices had dropped. Once all materials were gathered, Li Mo constructed an iron toilet in the corner of his room. A translucent outline of the toilet appeared on the floor beside the window with a countdown hovering above it. Elsewhere, the victorious team discovered that its hard-earned blueprint had disappeared without explanation. 2 minutes later, an iron toilet materialized inside Li Mo's expanded list of survival comforts. The humble fixture restored basic sanitation, while neighboring residents still relied on abandoned rooms. A violent disturbance outside soon forced Li Mo to grab the stolen cleaver and investigate. A crowd of survivors had gathered in the corridor, arguing loudly. Relief washed over him when he realized the commotion wasn't caused by a monster. He tightened his grip on the blade. He pulled the iron gate open a crack and poked his head out to observe. The bodies that had littered the corridor were gone. Many survivors stood before the doors of rooms whose occupants had died. At the front stood a burly man, watching a quarreling man and woman with visible frustration. The bald man glared back, refusing to back down. If not for his talent, he would not have bothered mediating enough. A resident named Chun Li-Huan accepted Lu Jun's compromise after realizing the surrounding crowd opposed her. A woman named Chun Li-Huan accepted Lu Jun's compromise after realizing the surrounding residents opposed her. Li Jianguo took the coin and snorted. Li Mo watched the silver coin change hands and felt a twinge of regret. At that moment, a door opposite slid open and a pair of long legs stepped out. As soon as Chen Yao exited her room, she spotted Li Mo peering out from his doorway. She knew exactly how many resources were needed to upgrade a gate to level 3. She herself lacked spare materials just to repair her wooden door, damaged by the monster the night before. A powerful male voice cut through the noise. After observing last night, there are 30 households on this floor. The gray fog outside has thinned to a faint haze. It should be safe now. Before Lu Jun could finish speaking, murmurs of unrest spread through the group. He barely touched the fog and dissolved straight into clothing. The outside must be even more dangerous. That was yesterday's fog. That cannot be the game's design. All survivors remaining on this floor will form a group. A young man with dyed yellow hair spoke up in defiance. The corridor fell quiet. This talent was tailor-made for a leader. A woman's voice broke the silence. All the men in the corridor turned their heads toward the sound. Someone swallowed softly, the noise surprisingly clear in the quiet hallway. Chen Yao ignored the attention and walked straight up to Lu Jun. His gaze lingered briefly on the dagger at her waist. Shortly afterward, 2 more people stepped out from behind their doors. One was a tall, thin young man wearing glasses. The other was a middle-aged woman in her 40s with short hair. Their numbers were too small. He walked toward Li Mo's door and halted this door. Every pair of eyes in the corridor followed his line of sight. The level 3 iron gate. Its dark gray metal surface glinted coldly in the dim corridor lighting. Beside the rickety wooden doors on either side, it looked less like a doorway and more like a solid wall. Leon reached out and brushed his palm across the iron surface. It was on an entirely different level from the rotting timber doors around them. His pupils narrowed slightly. Li Mo's voice drifted out through the door crack. He held his machete behind the wall, watching Lu Jian wearily. The bespectacled young man's eyes widened. He said it was luck. Yet Lu Jun knew better. He simply could not tell if the man refused to join out of fear or because he was hiding something valuable. "Friend?" Lu Jun knocked gently on the metal panel. "More hands mean greater safety." Li Mo had zero intention of venturing outside to take risks. He already possessed ample supplies and solid defenses. Perhaps he could send the rat out to collect more silver coins again tonight. He turned to the other survivors who had stayed silent. His talent made him value every survivor's life, but he would not beg anyone to cooperate. Upon hearing his words, those who had been wavering appeared to reach a decision. Li Jiangguo had initially planned to stay inside. His door was already level 2, but he feared what dangers the coming night might bring and refused to wait for death inside his room. A graceful, attractive woman among the crowd smiled softly, her gaze settling on Li Mo's door. A plan formed in her mind. He spoke to her. Liang Yun shook her head. Another resident accused Liang Yun of planning to survive by attaching herself to someone stronger. He figured she would come begging for help once she could no longer endure the risks alone. Seeing more survivors join his group, his health had now climbed to 160 points, enough to handle most threats. Lu Jun designated one abandoned room as a shared restroom to reduce disease inside the crowded floor. Its resident had left nothing but dried blood on the floor. "This room will serve as a shared restroom from now on. Ladies may use the stalls furthest inside, and men the ones nearest the entrance. Please show consideration for others." Sir Joanne stared at him in shock. With roles assigned, the scavenging party finally began its descent toward the building entrance. Lu Jun finalized the scavenging party, placing his most useful recruits where their talents could protect the group. She was too valuable to waste as cannon fodder. The corridor quickly emptied. Only a handful of survivors with level 2 doors chose not to join the expedition, claiming their upgraded doors meant they saw no need to risk venturing outside. However, they intended to let the group act as scouts to test the dangers waiting beyond the building. Sitting alone inside his room, Li Mo shared the exact same thought. The silly rat lay at his feet, half closing its cross eyes. Impossible to tell whether it slept or remained awake. He had been in a constant state of high alert since yesterday, and was finally overcome by weariness. He leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes until a knock echoed. Dong 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 liang. Yun stood before the iron gate, dressed in an off-shoulder dress that accentuated her graceful figure. She folded her arms and wore elegant heeled shoes. She understood perfectly well that in this crisis, survival meant aligning with the strongest survivors. Li Mo had upgraded his door to level 3 within just one day. Without a doubt, he was the most capable person on this floor. Inside the room, Li Mo had just shut his eyes when the knocking interrupted him. He frowned and cursed quietly. He grabbed his machete, rose, and peered outside. He saw an attractive woman standing at his doorway. Li Mo frowned slightly and did not open the door. His voice sounded irritable. Liang Yun heard movement from inside the room and put on what she thought was an inviting expression. Through the peephole, Li Mo watched the woman striking poses. Weariness rose within him, and the scene reminded him of a honey trap. When no further sound came from behind the door, Liang Yun tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and spoke again. Seeing she had piqued Li Mo's interest, Liang Yun's lips curved upward. Interested. Lion narrowed his eyes. Still, it was not impossible. She might simply have gotten lucky and obtained one right at the start. Li Mo pulled the door open a crack and looked at Liang Yun. Through the gap, Liang Yun spotted the metal toilet by the window at once. Her eyes lit up and her resolve strengthened. Just hand it over. Li Mo grew even more suspicious of her true motives. And there's another offer besides this blueprint. As she spoke, she folded her arms across her chest. Liam watched her gestures, curious to see what scheme she was plotting. Joy surged through Yong Yun. She was about to move forward when a large machete slid out, pressed against her neck. Her body stiffened instantly, yet she slowly stepped into the room. Inside the apartment, Li Mo kept the blade to her throat and stared at the woman. Such items were extremely rare at this stage, unavailable even on the trading market. He had not expected her to own one. Hand crossbow crafting materials, iron ingot, 10 timber, 10 silver coin, 6. Firearms did not exist yet, making this one of the few viable long-range weapons. Li Mo stored the blueprint in his inventory and continued watching Liang Yun. Once she saw he had accepted it, Liang Yun carried on. Besides this, there's one more thing. A notification immediately popped up on his status panel. Upon mutual agreement, living quarters will merge. All belongings of the vassal will transfer ownership to the liege, who holds power over the vassal's life and death. Additionally, the vassal will receive half of the legion's daily resource gains. Li Mo read the prompt. It was essentially a binding servitude contract, though the revenue split clause was intriguing. The woman looked at him expectantly. She had assumed Li Mo would accept the offer without hesitation the moment he read the terms. The agreement seemed overwhelmingly favorable for the dominant party. She did not appear to be lying. He glanced again at the contract terms. The arrangement held no obvious downsides for him. After brief consideration, he found no reason to refuse. The entire room shimmered and space began to warp. First, the living area expanded. The original 10 square meter room stretched to 20 m. A bed and a wooden table materialized. 5 silver coins and various supplies appeared inside his backpack. Room comfort +7. Li Mo stared in shock. He had not anticipated room consolidation to work in such a fashion. A surge of delight washed over him at the enlarged space. The cramped quarters before had felt stifling, like being locked in a cell. Now he had proper furniture and avoided spending resources to craft them. This was undoubtedly a worthwhile deal. Watching the spatial changes, Liang Yun knew Li Mo had accepted the contract. She visibly relaxed, letting out a long breath. Li Mo twitched at the address. Alone in the same room. The dynamic felt strange. He lowered the machete and glanced at Liang Yun. Just Li Mo is fine. She secretly smiled, certain she could easily win him over. Cross-eyed Mouse sensed the spatial shift and crept out from the corner, sniffing curiously at Liang Yun's shoes. Liang Yun felt movement by her feet. She glanced down, her face draining of color, and scrambled onto the bed at once. Li Mo almost laughed. The woman had stayed calm with a blade pressed to her neck, yet panicked over a rodent. He knelt down and picked up Cross-eyed Mouse. Liang Yun clutched the wall, still visibly frightened. One high-heeled shoe had fallen onto the floor. Her stocking foot, painted with pink nail polish, curled up on the bed. A pet belonging to Yui. It took her a long to calm down before she cautiously climbed off the bed. Her cheeks still flushed from fright. Liang Yun glanced shyly toward Li Mo. The fright from the mouse had triggered a sudden urge to use the restroom, yet she refused to head toward the abandoned room that once belonged to a corpse. Li Mo raised an eyebrow, then replied firmly. Liang Yun gritted her teeth, her fingers rubbing nervously against her skirt. She already belonged to him now. There was nothing to do but accept it. Under Li Mo's amused gaze, she sat down on the metal toilet. Shortly afterward, noise echoed from outside. The scavenging party had returned. Several hours earlier, Lu Jun and his 13 companions had reached the end of the corridor where a worn staircase blocked their path. The others remained silent, noticing another group descending the stairs from above. Their clothes were stained with blood, their expressions cold. They walked past without acknowledging anyone. Chen Yao tightened her grip on her dagger and watched the group's leader closely. After awakening her talent, she had become sensitive to auras. She sensed immense killing intent emanating from the man. He had killed many people. They passed numerous other survivors walking along the stairs. Only after exiting the apartment building did they see the outside world. The gray fog had thinned significantly, revealing a large courtyard. A towering iron gate over 2 meters high stood in the distance, and many survivors ventured into the lingering mist. It seemed the fog was safe during daylight hours. He stepped into the gray fog first, and the others followed suit. Chun-Li Wan brought up the rear, while forcing her trembling hands to remain steady. Chun-Li Wan entered the mist last, forcing her trembling legs to follow the others. The landscape resembled an abandoned wasteland. Several members shook their heads. Li Jiangguo raised his hand quietly. Li Jiangguogu nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead as he carefully observed the terrain. After traveling for some time, Lai? Gina's eyes narrowed. He spotted a crate behind an iron fence. When they drew near, they discovered a wooden chest. This must be a treasure chest. It usually contains rewards when opened. He refused to let excitement cloud his judgment. It could easily be a trap. He turned toward Lua. Lua harbored no suspicions. His top priority was gathering materials to reinforce his wooden door. He reached out and unlocked the chest. A flash of white light erupted. Water, food, and more than a dozen copper coins appeared inside. He collected all the supplies into his inventory. He turned to address the others. Thanks to Li Jiangguo's vision talent, they located many more wooden treasure chests along the way. They crossed paths with several other survivor teams. Yet, all sides remained silent, an unspoken truce holding between the small factions. While the group celebrated their finds, a man suddenly sprinted toward them from the mist. Several fierce-looking men chased close behind, shouting loudly, spotting only 4 opponents. Chun Li Wan challenged the pursuers until Wang Nan silenced her before she provoked a larger fight. The fleeing stranger sought protection beside Lu Jun, turning a private pursuit into the entire group's problem. The fleeing stranger reached Lu Jun's side, dragging the entire scavenging party into his conflict. He had intended to ignore the conflict entirely. As the 4 men approached, Lu Jun stepped forward and spoke calmly. "There's no need for violence." The leading man eyed their group. Though they outnumbered his party, many appeared weak or untrained. He let out a cold laugh. Self-preservation comes first in this world? As tensions peaked, an inhuman howl echoed through the air. Li Jiangguo's night vision revealed a chainsaw monster charging through the mist behind the pursuers. Lu Jun ordered everyone back toward the residential complex before the creature could close the distance. Chun Li Wan panicked during the retreat, and her collapsing stamina threatened to slow everyone nearby. Xun Yao had activated her concealment talent the moment the commotion began and sprinted away from the monster. The 4 aggressive men prepared to flee as well. The monster's chainsaw swept through the mist behind them. One man was cut clean in half. Blood splattered across the remaining 3. Driven mad by the stench, they fled without hesitation. Panic sapped her strength, and the war of the chainsaw drew steadily closer. Desperation surged inside her. A malicious thought took shape. She did not need to be the fastest runner. She only needed to avoid being the last one. She suddenly shoved the fleeing stranger forward. The man stared back in shock. He had felt some goodwill toward the woman beside him, never expecting her to sacrifice him. Ignoring the scream that followed, Qinran picked up speed and kept running. He scanned the crowd and noticed Li Jiangguo lagging far behind, the chainsaw swinging straight for him. He realized the danger. A chainsaw strike tore across Lu Jun's back and removed half his health, despite his enhanced vitality. He intercepted the attack, also hoping to win the group's loyalty. The brutal chainsaw wound removed half of Lu Jun's health, despite the vitality supplied by Unity. Without his Unity aura, the blow would have killed him instantly. Lai Jing was stared at Lu Jun, who had risked his life to save him. His eyes grew wet. Voices echoed outside the corridor. Yet, Li Mo made no rush to open his door. He first used the hand crossbow blueprint to craft the weapon, capable of piercing iron plates. Yet it only comes with 10 bolts. Once exhausted, it cannot fire again. Only then did he unlock his metal door. He watched as the group supported the bloodied Lu Zhong, all haggarded and exhausted. Tramping down the corridor, Liang Yun stepped beside him and covered her mouth in surprise. The survivors spotted Li Mo and Liang Yun standing in the doorway. Most striking of all, they saw the expanded living quarters, twice as large as their own rooms, and a metal toilet. Chen Yao leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Stunned, the relief of surviving morphed into bitter resentment. Anger flared inside her. Chun Li Wan compared their miserable rations with Li Mo's comfortable room and immediately became resentful. She used Lu Jun's injury to accuse Li Mo of selfishly withholding resources from the floor. "Look how badly Captain Lu is injured." Liang Yun bristled at the accusation. She had only just secured her protector, and this woman was trying to turn everyone against them. She shot back immediately. Li Mo glanced at Liang Yun, surprised she would defend him so fiercely. He understood Chunran was attempting to shift blame and incite conflict. He had briefly considered testing his newly crafted hand crossbow on her, yet decided it would be a waste. Letting her sink into despair as night fell would be far crueler punishment. A mocking smile tugged at Li Mo's lips. He regarded Chunran as if watching a dead person. Chun opened her mouth to retort. Survivors in nearby rooms heard the argument and opened their doors to watch. Li Jiangguo had searched thoroughly and found no healing items. He had overestimated his own strength. A soft voice rang out. From behind a level 2 wooden door stepped a cute girl roughly 1.5 meters tall. Yet her figure set her apart from ordinary cute girls. Bai Mingming walked out and looked at the injured LV Jean. He quickly composed himself upon hearing her words. Bai Mingming nodded and stretched out her hands. Streaks of green light flashed, and the wound on Lava's back healed visibly before everyone's eyes. He spoke sincerely to the young girl. Bai Mingming wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled faintly. If he had more, he would have been far more generous. It was wise to build good relations with someone who possessed such a valuable ability. Bai Mingming took the mineral water, nodded, and returned to her room. Li Mo watched the mysterious young girl, deep in thought. Healing was an indispensable power in the end times. He needed to find a chance to recruit her into his group. Worn out, the survivors gathered before Elvjean. Each received their share of supplies. Chun Liwan stared at her tiny ration with resentment, while stronger survivors prepared for another night. She had never endured such meager rations before. Li Mo shut his door and paid no more attention to the group dividing their pitiful supplies. Liang Yun stood beside him. Huffing with indignation, Li Mo found her reaction somewhat amusing. As soon as he sat down on the bed, Liang Yun moved to his side and gently massaged his shoulders. Liang Yun's shoulder massage eased Li Mo's tension while he reviewed the remaining before nightfall. He opened his status panel and glanced at the countdown to the second sunset. Before the next night, Li Mo remembered that Small Favor still had one unused activation. Li Mo opened the public chat channel, scrolling through the messages, ready to pick his target. Chat reports revealed environments ranging from oceans to jungles, proving every residential zone faced different terrain. Li Mo read through the messages. He realized not everyone faced the same surroundings outside their rooms. Some saw oceans, others deserts or dense jungles. He scrolled for a long but found no valuable photos posted by anyone. Refusing to give up, he kept scrolling and finally spotted something worthwhile. The photo showed a man dressed in black standing beside a monster's corpse. The corpse was irrelevant. Li Mo's heartbeat quickened sharply. Someone had gotten their hands on firearms this early. But soon it would belong to him. With a thought, a pure black pistol materialized in Li Mo's grasp. The refined level 2 pistol could consume spirit crystals or crafted ammunition to replenish its shots. Far away in a jungle zone, the pistol's original owner, Ye Fan, celebrated his growing authority. Ye Fan's sudden loss exposed how completely the distant retrieval AFFIX ignored normal ownership. Ever since he obtained this pistol, he had risen far above ordinary survivors. Once just an ordinary office worker, he now held power over others. Ye Fan treated weaker survivors like servants because the firearm made resistance nearly impossible. Ye Fan forced a weaker survivor to surrender water, enjoying the authority created by his firearm. A former supervisor concealed his resentment while surrendering water to the newly empowered gunman. The former supervisor remembered when Ye Fan had been an ordinary subordinate with no authority. Ye Fan enjoyed the submission until he reached towards storage and found the pistol missing. He reached for his backpack to stow away his supplies. Then his heart skipped a beat. He checked again in disbelief. The missing pistol turned Ye Fan's confidence into immediate panic. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. When the pistol vanished, Ye Fan immediately abandoned his arrogance and concealed his panic. Then he smiled and helped the middle-aged man to his feet. Li Mo let out a quiet laugh as he gripped the pistol. He had thought it wasteful to kill Chun Ran with his crossbow. But things were different now. He stood up, grabbed his crossbow from his backpack, and opened the door. The survivors had just finished splitting supplies and were heading back to their rooms. Chun Ran had her eyes set on Wang Nan. She planned to use her looks to beg for more food. He did not get to hear the rest of her words. Blood splattered across Wang Nan's face. The crossbow bolt pierced Chun Ran's head before she could manipulate another resident for supplies. Li Mo lowered his crossbow. He had not expected his aim to be so precise, landing a fatal shot on the first try. The sound of Chun Ran's body collapsing pulled everyone back to reality. Chun Li Huan stifled a scream and scrambled into her room. Chen Yao grew even more confused. Fear welled up in everyone's eyes as they looked at Li Mo. Li Mo spoke, then shut his door without waiting for anyone to respond. He stumbled backwards several steps before bending over and vomiting all over the floor. Greedy neighbors ignored the body and rushed toward every item Chun Ran dropped. He cared nothing about the death. He only wanted food and currency. He quietly knelt to gather the loot while no one watched. The others turned their attention to him, seeing the man collecting supplies. They rushed forward to grab what they could. Some even tore down her wooden door and looted everything inside the room. The woman watched the chaos in despair. A copper coin rolled to her feet. Even the woman criticizing their behavior eventually picked up a copper coin from the floor. Lu Jun privately condemned Li Mo's ruthlessness while Li Jiangguo helped him back inside. He pulled some food from his backpack and handed it over. Li Jiangguo accepted the supplies gratefully, swore loyalty once more, then stepped outside and closed the wooden door. With an hour and a half left until nightfall, the corridor stood empty. Once outside, Li Jiangguo dropped his subservient demeanor. He stared at the pistol blueprint in his backpack and let out a cold snort, plus that beautiful woman beside him. Inside Li Mo's room, Liang Yun hung her head, looking at him nervously. She had not expected Li Mo to act so decisively, nor had she anticipated the gun appearing out of thin air. Offer Limo grew stronger within her. Yet, she felt a flicker of joy. She had attached herself to an incredibly powerful ally. Li Mo put away his weapons and bit into a loaf of bread. He glanced at Liang Yun, who dared not meet his eyes, and chuckled softly. Liang Yun picked up a bottle of water and walked over to Li Mo. Speaking gently, she wrapped her arm around his arm and leaned close to him. Li Mo still lacked enough silver coins to upgrade to a level 4 iron door, even combining his coins with Liang Yun's. He was still short by more than a dozen. Still, a level 3 iron door ought to hold back the night's monsters. Li Mo also had a plan. Now that he possessed ranged weapons, he intended to hunt monsters, test whether he could gain experience points, and discover what rewards came with leveling up. As the final 5 minutes ticked down, every survivor's nerves were taut. In the room opposite, Shunao sat huddled in the corner, tense with anxiety. She had barely restored her door's durability yesterday, exhausting most of her supplies. She had no extra resources to buy more food. The others were in a similar situation. Upgrading to level 2 wooden doors had drained all their savings, and the small ration of food distributed was far from enough for a full day. After the day's terror, Wang Nan slept, while Chun Li Wan feared Li Mo might punish her opposition. Fear spread through the corridor until the countdown hit 0. The world plunged into darkness once more, moonlight spilling through the windows onto the floor. Li Mo pressed himself against the door, peering through the upgraded peephole toward the far end of the corridor. He planned to observe what kind of monsters arrived, if any carried weapons. He would wait until midnight to seize them before finishing the creature off with his pistol. Liang Yun blinked and clutched Li Mo's arm, listening intently to the noises outside. One decaying zombie after another emerged from the darkness. Rotting skin and twisted faces marked them. Roughly 30 zombies filled the corridor. Li Mo felt a twinge of disappointment at the sight. Shame none of them carry weapons. But a glint of reflected light caught his eye a moment later. He focused and saw a ring glimmering on one male zombie's hand. Ordinary rings could not glow like that. Li Mo immediately suspected it was a special item. It was strange for such an artifact to be on a zombie hand. The reward seemed far too obvious. Li Mo retrieved his crossbow. Wasting pistol ammunition on these zombies was unnecessary. The crossbow would suffice. Liang Yun feared Li Mo planned to fight the zombie horde, but he intended to claim experience personally. He held the crossbow out toward her. Liang Yun impaled instantly. The level 3 iron door will keep them out for sure. Li Mo had no intention of sending her out anyway, not because he feared for her safety, but because he wanted all the experience for himself. The zombies drew near the first restroom. Li Mo opened his door. Li Mo raised the crossbow and pulled the trigger. The bolt pierced a zombie skull, and the creature crashed to the ground. The other zombies paid no heed and continued forward. The silent crossbow worked perfectly. Killing them grants experience. Several more zombies fell in quick succession, dropping various supplies. The last 9 bolts were spent. His experience stalled at 90 points. Just 10 short of leveling up. Squinty, get out there and gather all the dropped loot. The small rat darted out at the command. Li Mo stowed the crossbow. He chose not to draw the pistol. Its loud report would attract attention. He planned to wait until the zombies scattered, then pick them off one by one with his great sword. He retreated into his room, leaving only a narrow gap for the rat to haul supplies inside. Li Mo waited for the zombies to split apart. Exactly as he predicted. The zombies separated and began slamming against different doors. Through his peephole, Lu Jun watched Li Mo step outside. At first, he thought Li Mo had lost his mind, daring to face such a horde alone. When he saw him slay multiple zombies effortlessly, an idea formed. Chen Yao also witnessed Li Mo defeating the undead. She did not hesitate. She grabbed her dagger, opened her door, and activated her concealment talent. A zombie lumbered toward her. Just as Li Mo prepared to strike, a figure flashed past. Chen Yao's dagger sliced through the air with a silver glint. The blade failed to sever the zombie's head and lodged in its neck instead. The wounded zombie let out a hoarse roar. Black blood and rotting flesh splattered from the wound as it twisted its head wildly. Unable to locate its hidden attacker, Li Mo rushed forward to another zombie and swung his sword. The creature's head rolled cleanly onto the ground. The greatsword looted from a monster was undeniably sharp. Experience plus 10, level 1, level 2. Li Mo summoned his status panel and scanned it quickly. Li Mo level 2, room comfort 10. Health points 100 out of 0, stamina 9,500. Satiety 90 out of 100. Experience 0 out of 150. Constitution 2. Just as he suspected, leveling up raised most of his attributes. Though his spirit stat remained unchanged, a warm current surged through Li Mo's body. He swung the sword once, clearly feeling his strength grow. He looked up to see Chen Yao finish off her zombie, yet Li Mo frowned. A sense of danger lingered in his mind. Something was wrong, far too wrong. The special zombie wearing the glowing ring had stood still this entire time. Besides that, tonight's monsters felt far too weak. They were nothing like the horse-faced goblins from the first night. When things seemed too easy, danger lurked. Li Mo kept a weary eye on the stationary special zombie and slowly backed into his room. Liang Yun tensed as she watched him return. Seeing how weak the monsters were, watching Chen Yao venture outside to hunt, he grew tempted to join the fight. Though he also sensed something odd about their strength. He knew opportunities like this would not come often. He had to seize the chance. Fortune favors the bold. He lacked Chen Yao's concealment talent. The moment his footsteps echoed in the corridor, nearby zombies turned as one and charged toward him with snarls. The other survivors watched Lu Jun and Chen Yao fight the monsters with apparent ease. One after another, they grew tempted to head outside as well. Li Jianguo was the first to push open the door, clutching a splintered piece of wood, spotting a lone zombie. He drove the wood straight into its skull. Supplies spilled all over the ground, and seeing the experience points rise on his panel, a grin spread across his face. These monsters aren't all that tough. More doors swung open, residents poured out wielding wooden sticks and broken chair legs. They really dropped silver coins. Li Mo retrieved the last silver coin from Cross-Eyed Mouse, who had slipped out through the door crack. Yet he did not shut the door right away. Supplies kept spilling from the fallen zombies. He called out to Cross-Eyed Mouse again. As expected, Cross-Eyed Mouse darted back outside. It nimbly weaved between the zombies, gathering copper and silver coins. Others failed to notice. At that moment, Lu Jun and Chen Yao were fully focused, fighting the zombies before them. Their nerves stretched taut. Neither noticed the small creature darting around their feet. Still, watching his experience bar climb steadily and seeing loot drop beside zombie corpses sent a surge of adrenaline through him. Most ordinary zombies had already been dealt with by the crowd. Only one zombie stood motionless far in the distance. A faintly glowing ring glinted on its hand. On the other side, after Chen Yao finished off her last zombie, she also spotted the unusual zombie. She quickly scanned her surroundings and realized Li Mo had already retreated into his room. A jolt of unease surged through her. Instead of charging forward like Lu Jun, she kept her eyes fixed on the zombie and quietly stepped backward several paces. Li Jianguo picked up silver coins off the ground and turned to Elf Jean. The other residents were equally elated. The second Elf Jean lifted his foot to move forward. The ring burst with blinding light. A deafening roar erupted from the zombie's throat. The sound wave swept down the hallway. He cursed inwardly, yet no sound escaped his throat. He could only watch helplessly as the zombie slowly turned its head, its murky eyes locking onto him. The roar carried tremendous power. Even through wooden doors, the rooms hummed with vibration. Residents along the hallway groaned, dizzy by the sonic assault. Lee Mo had slammed shut his reinforced Grade 3 door. The heavy door blocked most of the shockwave, leaving his room largely unaffected. He pressed his eye to the peephole again. Outside, Cross-Eyed Mouse merely shook its head, seemingly completely unfazed by the roar. It continued sorting through scattered supplies, glanced intelligently toward the roaring special zombie, then bent back down to collect silver coins. When Lu Jun regained his senses, the zombie was already right before him. Panicked, he held his iron pipe up in defense. An overwhelming force crashed into the pipe, bending it sharply into a U shape. A mouthful of blood welled up in his throat. Luckily, he had stepped back slightly just in time, saving him from an instant kill. Others were not so fortunate. They stood rigid, dazed by the roar. A young man in the front row snapped out of the stupor first, screaming in agony. He saw the zombie's fang sunk deep into his arm. Arrest woke to witness the horrific scene. The infected survivor begged outside Lu Jun's door, but fear kept the supposed leader behind his barrier. Lu Jun redirected the infected survivor toward Bai Mingming rather than risk opening his own door. The young man's mind was already fading. By now, the man had fully turned into a zombie, growling mindlessly. The mysterious yellow delivery box could provide any ordinary food once every hour. Just then, a system notification echoed inside Limo's head. Today's entry has refreshed. The magical yellow box. Daily usage count refreshed. Limo stared at the description of the new entry. Ever since he arrived in this hellish place, his meals had consisted of dry bread or tasteless compressed biscuits traded from the market. With this ability, he would never have to worry about food again. Any dish he could imagine would be available every hour. It was essentially an infinitely restocking mobile food warehouse. He wondered if he could get that famous creamy milk tea he had heard about. Limo swallowed hard, forcing down his rising smile as his mind raced. Food was an invaluable currency in this world. Life-sustaining meals could be traded for supplies, exchanged for coins, or used to win people over. More importantly, he could summon any delicacy far superior to dry, stale bread. But there were more pressing matters at hand. The zombies' roars continued, echoing outside. Blood trickled from the ears of people trapped in other rooms. Limo looked at the glowing ring on the zombie finger and formed a guess. He activated his entry ability. A golden ring materialized in his palm. At the exact same time, the zombie's shrill roar weakened abruptly. Losing its ferocity, Limo held the ring between two fingers and examined it under faint moonlight. Yet, he found nothing unusual about it. It could turn whoever wore it into a zombie. He could not afford to take that risk. His gaze drifted to Liang Yun beside him, who sat with her eyes squeezed shut, hands pressed over her ears. Here, try putting this on. The roar died away, and Liang Yun opened her eyes to see the ring in Limo's hand. Her cheeks flushed instantly. She had seen the ring glowing on the zombie's hand earlier, and knew it must be a rare treasure. Limo scratched the tip of his nose. Liang Yun's face turned even redder. She shot Limo an awkward glance before taking the ring and sliding it onto her finger. Instantly, a cool sensation washed over her mind. Her panel notified her that her mental power had increased by 3 points. Limo watched her and quietly pulled a pistol from his system backpack, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. And Liang Yun mutated. Liang Yun looked utterly relaxed as she spoke. Limo's eyes lit up. He stowed the pistol behind his back. He had truly feared the ring might trigger her transformation. This item boosted mental power. Mental power could not even be increased through leveling up. This ring was truly an incredible treasure. He took back the ring and slipped it onto his own finger. Immediately, a description appeared. The mental amplification ring permanently increased spirit power without any visible mutation or harmful side effect. Even the slight foggus left by the zombie sonic attack faded away, though he had barely suffered any harm from the roar. He checked his panel and saw his mental power had climbed to 4 points. Outside the room, the zombie continued growling. Yet, stripped of its ring, it was no stronger than an ordinary zombie. Still, Limo chose not to venture out. All he wanted now was a proper meal. Ignoring the endless snarls from the hallway, Limo stood and summoned the yellow box onto the wooden table. Liang Yun stared at the strange new box, growing accustomed to witnessing Limo produce unexpected wonders. Limo lifted the lid. The interior was pitch black. He stood frozen for a moment, unsure what food to summon first. Liang Yun studied the box, struck by its familiarity. It looked exactly like the delivery boxes used by takeout services from before the disaster. Instead of answering, Limo turned to her with a question. She blinked in surprise before answering instinctively. She swallowed hard, her gaze drifting far away. Her voice trailed off. Dwelling on such memories only brought torment. Limo snapped his fingers. He reached both hands into the box and focused his thoughts on hot pot. His fingers closed around something solid. He lifted it, pulling out a brass hot pot. Rich, savory aroma instantly filled the room. Limo set the pot on the table. The endless dark vortex inside the box vanished, replaced by 2 sets of bowls, chopsticks, and dipping sauces. Gurgle. Liang Yun's stomach rumbled loudly. She breathed in the tempting scent, swallowing repeatedly. She watched a full hot pot emerge from the box and pinched her thigh hard. This isn't a dream. Liang Yun walked slowly toward the table, her eyes growing damp. For 2 days, she had eaten nothing warm, let alone hot pot. The bright red butter broth simmered fiercely. Chili peppers and Sichuan peppercorns floated amid chunks of lamb. Limo prepared the dipping sauces and handed a bowl to the stunned girl. He pushed her sauce plate forward and picked up a slice of lamb. He dipped it in the sauce and took a bite. Tender and flavorful, the spicy taste surged across his tongue. Liang Yun copied his actions, blowing on the meat before putting it in her mouth. The moment her teeth sank into the lamb, flavor exploded across her taste buds. Warmth slid down her throat and spread through her whole body. A tear plopped onto the table. She quickly wiped her cheeks, yet more tears kept falling. After eating, Limo began searching the market for furniture that could improve comfort and stamina recovery. She usually carried an elegant, captivating aura, yet she had this adorably innocent side. Unfortunately, there was no lamp in the dim room, and they lacked proper chairs. The two ate standing up. As he ate, Limo thought to himself, he ought to browse the trade market and buy more furniture. The aroma of hot pot drifted out the window. In the neighboring room, Li Jianguo sat on the floor, gnawing dry, hard bread. He frowned as he forced it down. The bread was so dry, it scratched his throat. Mid-bite, he twitched his nose. A strong smell of meat drifted into the room. Li Jianguo stopped chewing. He sniffed repeatedly, eyes widening in shock. He tossed the leftover half-loaf onto the table and hurried to the door, pressing his face against the wood to inhale the scent. The fragrance made his stomach rumble and filled his mouth with saliva. He picked up his bread and ate while breathing in the aroma. On the 20th floor hallway, Xiaoxiang finished off the last monster and shook blood off his blade. He grinned fiercely as he saw his level rise to level 2 on his panel. While others feared these monsters, he reveled in fighting them. Suddenly, he caught a whiff of fragrance. One of his subordinates swallowed hard. The scent is coming from somewhere in this building. Xiaoxiang licked his lips, greed flashing in his eyes. An hour later, the scent still lingered. Li Mo's lips burned red from the chili spice. He gulped a large mouthful of water, wiping his mouth. He felt thoroughly invigorated. Leo suddenly thought this place was not so bad. Compared to scrambling to survive every single day, life here was far more comfortable. Liang Yun remained by the table, poking through leftover ingredients in the broth with her chopsticks, making soft, slurping noises. Though thoroughly numbed by the spice, she still craved more. She did not even notice the chili oil smudged on the tip of her nose. Liam laid back on the rough wooden bed and looked around the simple room. It was spacious, yet still lacked furnishings. He opened his panel and browsed the trade market. Li glanced sideways at her. Lian Yin quickly set down her chopsticks and leaned over. Everything is shockingly expensive. Li Mo had not checked the market in quite some time. Thanks to his new box, food was no longer a concern. He could also summon regular food items to sell. Bread for sale, 40 copper coins per loaf. Ham sausages, 80 copper coins. Rare instant noodles, 70 silver coins per pack. Trading iron ingots for food. Sofa blueprint price to be negotiated privately. buying all weapon blueprints. Simple wooden bed blueprint. Trade for 2 silver coins. Li Mo scanned the listings. He saw no chair blueprints, but found a listing for a sofa blueprint. He tapped the screen slowly. Prices for ordinary food have dropped a little compared to yesterday. Looks like many people ventured out to scavenge supplies. Meat prices, however, remain extremely high. Of course, Liang Yun whispered. Finding bread is already a stroke of luck. Meat is something no one dares hope for. Li Mo opened a private chat window and messaged the seller listing the sofa blueprint. The blueprint meant nothing to someone on the brink of starvation. The buyer offering bread was clearly a powerful figure with ample supplies. Forming a connection with such a person would only benefit him in the future. Materials required for crafting. Li Mo used the blueprint immediately. A transparent hologram of a sofa appeared before him. He mentally positioned the hologram in front of the table. A floating countdown timer popped up. Shortly after, a system alert notified him of a friend request. Curious. Li Mo accepted. He closed the panel. The sofa finished constructing. A plush black fabric sofa materialized before the table. Comfortable sofa. No tear. He sat down heavily and sank into the cushions. It was infinitely more pleasant than the hard wooden bed. He turned toward Liang Yun, patting the space beside him on the sofa. She walked over and sat gently beside him. Liang Yun shifted uncomfortably as she sat beside him, her cheeks flushing faintly. The spot next to him was soft and comfortable. He adjusted his seating position subtly and remarked casually. She leaned lightly against his shoulder, her body still tense. Li Mo felt the gentle weight leaning against him and savored the moment briefly before turning his attention back to important matters. If he wanted to sell food, he needed goods with broad appeal. They didn't have to be top quality, just affordable enough that most people could scrape together the resources to buy them and would be willing to spend. He walked over to the table, thinking about cartons containing 100 canned meats each. He wanted to test whether the crate could produce such an unusual stock of supplies. He had some in hot pot and even tableware before, so there was a chance it would work this time. 2. He needed to find out the limits of the yellow crate, whether it could manifest anything he imagined. Staring at the yellow crate that had transformed back into a black swirling vortex, Li Mo reached inside and lifted. A heavy cardboard box landed steadily on the table. He opened the lid and counted. Disappointment washed over him. It seemed the crate could not produce excessive quantities of goods. He had entertained thoughts of summoning devil fruits, sins of beans, and other special food items. But that was clearly impossible. Li Mo picked up 1 can of meat and listed it on the trading post. Savory can meat, 1 silver coin per can. First come, first served. Barely a moment passed before the newly listed can was purchased. Without hesitation, Li Mo put the remaining 19 cans up for sale as well. Liang Yun watched his actions and saw 10 silver coins suddenly appear in her inventory. Her mind spun with shock. She once believed her talent only made her suitable to rely on others. Yet, she had never imagined she could earn wealth so effortlessly. Cross-eyed Mouse's face as he turned toward Liang Yun. Liang Yun blinked and stared at him in confusion. Li Mo gestured toward the trading interface. Canned meat is easy to store and filling. Ordinary survivors can spare the resources to buy a can for a proper meat meal. Liang Yun was still confused. Li Mo opened the system shop. Today's goods have refreshed. Item 1, average fire axe 5. Price, 2 silver coins. Item 2, solar panel blueprint 2. Price, 10 silver coins. Item 3, nutritious roach protein 999,999. Price 30 copper coins. His eyes locked onto the second item. He had not expected the shop to stock such a blueprint as early as the second day. Without electricity, survival became exponentially harder. Lighting, refrigeration, and future electrical modifications all relied on power. This blueprint was an essential resource, and only 2 copies were available. He checked his inventory. Looting the zombies had earned him plenty of silver coins and spirit crystals. Combined with the money from selling canned meat, he now held 40 silver coins and 5 spirit crystals. A solar panel blueprint. Liang Yun's eyes widened in amazement. Li Mo did not hesitate and confirmed the purchase. The moment the blueprint entered his possession, its details unfolded. Materials required for construction: spirit crystal 3, iron ingot 7, glass 6. Outside the door, the little rat crouched down and scratched at the door with its tiny paws. Li Mo browsed the trading post further, yet not a single electrical blueprint could be found. Power means nothing without appliances to run. Still, he did not grow anxious. It was only the second day. Many residents in the building were venturing out to scavenge. Glass was everywhere, and sooner or later, people would list it on the market. He could remain safe indoors while others brought these materials to light. Li Mo walked back to the sofa and sank into the soft cushions. Waves of accumulated exhaustion crashed over him. He tilted his head toward Liang Yun, his voice heavy with weariness. For the past 2 days, his nerves had been stretched taut, and he had not slept a full night. Leaning back against the sofa, his eyelids grew heavier. Soon, his breathing steadied, his head lulled to one side, and he drifted into deep sleep. Liang Yun faithfully kept watch beside him. Every hour, she pulled a box of canned meat from the yellow crate. At nearly the same time, Li Jianguo stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. Other residents filed out one after another, their faces sallow with dark circles beneath their eyes. Clearly, none had slept well. Mental torment weighed heavier than physical fatigue. The corpses and bloodstains from the previous night in the corridor had vanished completely, as if nothing had happened. Before long, a crowd gathered in the hallway, whispering in small groups. The group marched toward the lobby on the first floor. They saw several men with hostile expressions standing on the steps, armed with steel pipes, machetes, and other weapons. The leader was a burly man with a coarse face. He stood on the steps looking down on everyone with undisguised contempt. Xiao Xiang nodded in satisfaction and continued speaking. The crowd erupted instantly. A young man with dyed yellow hair stepped forward defiantly. He clenched his fists and charged forward, intending to teach Xiao Xiang a lesson. A cruel grin spread across Xiao Xiang's face. He knew how to handle this mob. Kill the troublemaker first, and the rest of these timid people would fall silent. Without a word, he swung his blade, bolstered by his body reinforcement talent and level 2 stats. A flash of steel cut through the air and blood splattered. The yellow-haired youth barely let out a half-cream before collapsing rigidly to the ground. He twitched once and fell still. The noisy lobby plunged into deathly silence. Every face pad and people subconsciously stepped backward. Xiao Xiang shook the blood off his blade and glanced over the crowd slowly. Xiao Xiang also announced armed nightly patrols, pretending the extortion payment funded continuous protection. He stared at the silent crowd and sneered. Li Jianguo seethed with anger. This was blatant plunder. This is nothing but robbery. Xin Li Huan cut in immediately. He cut that young man down without hesitation, and he has dozens of men. Witnessing the youth's death before his eyes, Wang Nin swallowed all the bold words he had prepared. He had hoped to rally everyone in the lobby to resist, but, judging by their reaction, the entire building shared this cowardice. Few dared even to speak up, let alone fight back. Amid the crowd, Chen Yao watched the farce with indifference. She silently activated her concealment talent and slipped along the wall. She had no to waste on these arguments. Leveling up and scavenging supplies were her priorities. Just then, a loud voice boomed out. A middle-aged man with a thick beard stepped forward. Xiao Xiang had not expected anyone to stand up against him. He folded his arms and listened with amusement. His grin widened until he burst into laughter. He activated his skill enfeeblement domain within 50 meters. All targets except the caster and designated allies suffer a 50% attribute reduction if their level is lower than the caster, or a 20% reduction if their level is higher. Consumes 10 stamina per minute. A red barrier enveloped everyone. A wave of overwhelming weakness washed over each person. All his attributes had plummeted to 0.5 if one represented an average adult. Xiao Xiang descended the steps slowly. Xiao Xiang released the bearded dissenter only after terror erased every trace of organized resistance. Back upstairs, Lu Jun's group resented surrendering supplies they had nearly died collecting. The bearded dissenter submitted, and Xiao Xiang's overwhelming domain erased the lobby's remaining resistance. Their resentment focused on Li Mo because blaming the tyrant directly felt far more dangerous. Li Jianguo proposed shifting the floor's protection payment onto Li Mo and his visibly wealthy household. The iron gate, expanded room, and abundant food made the scheme easy to sell to desperate neighbors. Lu Jun supported the plan because Zhao Xiang could eliminate a rival without exposing Lu Jun's ambition. Their alliance fractured completely as the supposed leader chose manipulation over protecting another resident. Li Jianguo insisted that someone truly powerful would have confronted Zhao Xiang instead of remaining behind a gate. The accusation reached Li Mo's door while Liang Yun guarded 4 boxes of canned meat inside. Li Mo awakened from deep sleep and calmly approached the hostile group waiting outside. Every expression beyond the peephole revealed that the visit concerned more than a simple warning. Lu Jun explained that armed strangers now demanded protection fees from every floor. His concern was fake, because jealousy over Li Mo's supplies and Liang Yun had already distorted his judgment. Lu Jun wanted Zhao Xiang to punish the man whose success exposed his own limitations. Several neighbors gathered outside, hoping pressure would make Li Mo surrender most of the required payment. Chun Li Wan emphasized Zhao Xiang's weapons and numbers, turning fear into another weapon against Li Mo. Li Mo rejected the protection fee because his own defenses were stronger than anything Zhao Xiang offered. He dismissed the group before their moral pressure could become a negotiation. Seeing the conversation going nowhere, Lu Jun held back the shouting Li Jianguo and sighed for the crowd, putting on a magnanimous air. His words sounded noble, yet he had already made his plan. He would exaggerate Li Mo's attitude to Zhao Xiang shortly, and someone else would handle Li Mo for him. The crowd felt grateful toward Lu Jun, and their resentment toward Li Mo deepened. He continued knocking on the other residents' doors. Bai Mingming's door revealed supplies earned through healing wounded survivors. Li Jianguo immediately exploited her kindness, claiming the floor would suffer unless she contributed more. The opportunist performed concern while privately planning never to repay the young healer. Bai Mingming hesitated under collective pressure, then surrendered resources she had earned honestly. Her only request was that the group leave enough supplies for her own survival. After tallying supplies from every household, Lu Jun realized Chen Yao was nowhere to be found. With no other choice, they headed downstairs to report the truth to Zhao Xiang. Once the footsteps in the corridor faded completely, Li Mo pulled the door open slightly. A cross-eyed mouse darted in from the shadows. He had caught a glimpse of the figure huddled around the corridor corner through the peephole just now. Nearly forgetting about the crossed eyes, on the first floor, the coerced manager Yukaiho collected tribute with visible discomfort. Yukaiho questioned the meager payment before escorting Lu Jun's group toward Zhao Xiang. When he saw the scant supplies laid out before him, his expression darkened as he stared at Lu Jun, who was leading the group. Li Jianguo carefully exaggerated Li Mo's refusal, presenting calm independence as a direct insult. Each invented detail pushed Zhao Xiang closer to attacking the fortified room personally. The tyrant heard that Li Mo possessed enormous reserves and openly rejected his authority. Fury replaced calculation as Zhao Xiang slammed his blade against the lobby table. 2 armed lackeys received orders to drag Li Mo downstairs and seize his property. The lackeys accepted eagerly, believing steel pipes and numbers would overcome one fortified resident. Lu Jun and Li Jianguo followed them upstairs while concealing their satisfaction. Their footsteps filled the corridor, announcing that the tribute dispute had become a direct assault. The attackers mocked the level 3 gate, unaware that Li Mo now possessed more than 100 silver coins. Continuous canned meat sales had financed another defensive upgrade without requiring him to leave safety. Li Mo placed one hand against the gate and activated the 10-minute construction process. Steel pipes hammered the entrance, while he calmly watched the upgrade timer continue falling. Lu Jun's followers joined the assault after the first 2 lackeys failed to leave a meaningful dent. Their combined attacks reduced durability slowly, encouraging the mob to mistake temporary damage for victory. Li Mo remained relaxed because the unfinished upgrade would restore and strengthen the entire barrier. They looked down and saw nothing but faint white scratches on the door's surface, not even a dent. Li Jianguo attacked first. Desperate to prove loyalty to Zhao Xiang's men, he pulled iron ingots out of his system backpack and joined the assault. The rest followed suit, hostility and madness burning in every pair of eyes. Bai Mingming stood at the back, twisting the hem of her clothes and furrowing her brows. She knew this was wrong, yet she dared not speak up. She could only fret silently for Li Mo trapped inside. On the sofa, Li Mo ate watermelon taken out of a crate. He crossed his legs and watched the door as if watching a troupe of clowns. Liang Yun pulled out a dagger she had bought from the trading post, tensing up as she guarded the entrance. She was no delicate ornament. If pushed to the brink, even a cornered rabbit would fight back. Seeing how tense she was, Li Mo held out a slice of watermelon to her. Li Mo assured Liang Yun that the attackers could not enter, then continued eating watermelon. She had no appetite at the moment. Li Mo did not press her and took the slice back to eat himself. The countdown hit 3 minutes. Li Mo bit into the watermelon and said slowly, "That will be quite entertaining." The people outside kept hammering relentlessly. A thin fissure split the surface of the door. A thin crack convinced the exhausted mob that one final burst of violence would open the room. The group grew wilder by the second. They had long forgotten they were once the oppressed, once themselves. All their built-up fear, resentment, and powerlessness turned to violence, vented entirely onto the door. Liang Yun pated upon hearing their threats and pressed herself tightly against Li Mo, seeking safety in his presence. In the next instant, the gate that had appeared ready to buckle transformed completely. Its metal surface grew thicker and heavier, and an assault window appeared at the top. The completed Level 4 Fearless Iron Gate restored all damage and gained a protected assault window. Unmatched beneath this steel barrier, equipped with an assault window to launch attacks from inside the room, features a reflective observation port that grants an extended field of vision. The crowd outside was mid-swing when their vision blurred. Stunned by the sudden transformation, they froze on the spot. Bai Meng'em stared at the newly upgraded Level 4 gate, curiosity toward Li Mo stirring inside her. The others were far less calm. They had hammered away for ages on the verge of breaking through, only for the gate to upgrade out of nowhere. The gate just leveled up. It was only Level 3 a moment ago. Just imagine how many resources another upgrade would cost. He barely leaves his room every day. Yet shock quickly gave way to greed. If he could afford to upgrade his gate to Level 4 so casually, the room must be stuffed with precious supplies. If they forced their way inside, they would strike it rich. The lead lackey gritted his teeth and brought his steel pipe crashing down once more. A sharp ring echoed out. A powerful recoil jolted up his arms. Pain shot through his palm. Blood seeped from his tiger's mouth. The resistance felt entirely different. Earlier, he could leave his scratches, but the gate was now so hard, even firearms might struggle to pierce it. With that, the two men turned and hurried downstairs, back in the lobby on the first floor. Xiao frowned when he saw them return empty-handed. Spotting the blood on one man's hand, his expression turned icy. The man's name is Li Mo. Learning about the Level 4 gate convinced Zhao Xiang that Li Mo threatened his authority. It had taken supplies scavenged from the entire building just to get his own gate to Level 3. He knew exactly how costly a Level 4 upgrade was. This man could not be allowed to live. The tyrant decided that allowing such rapid growth would eventually cost him control of the building. He left Yukaiho managing tribute and gathered additional armed followers for a personal confrontation. Yukaiho watched them leave while quietly despising the brutal system he had been forced to enforce. A young woman stood before him, teary-eyed and begging for more time, saying she could not gather the required supplies. The reluctant manager secretly granted extra to one resident who lacked the demanded payment. Deep down, he refused to submit to Zhao Xiang's. Back when he worked as a security guard, he had always believed those who needed protection ought to be sheltered. But circumstances were against him. Unable to win in a fight, he could only bow his head for now. He would take things one step at a time. Up in the corridor, the rest still circled the gate, continuing their futile attempts to break it down. Zhao Xiang arrived with his men. His gaze swept over the thick, imposing Level 4 iron door, and his pupils constricted. When Zhao Xiang reached the corridor, even his followers recognized the Level 4 gate as an extraordinary defense. He smacked Zhongbo hard on the back of his head. He straightened his collar and spoke up. Li Mo rejected recruitment and offered Zhao Xiang the humiliating alternative of becoming his subordinate. He pulled a fire axe from his backpack and swung it hard against the gate. A shrill clash of metal reverberated, yet the door sustained not a single scratch. With his strength in that axe, a Level 3 gate would struggle to withstand the blow. But the Level 4 gate was impossibly tough. Li. Jiang Guo's eyes rolled as an idea came to him. He sidled over and smiled ingratiatingly. Unable to damage the gate, Li Jiangguo suggested using smoke to force the occupants outside. Quite the cunning scheme. Li Jiangguo rubbed his hands together with a grin. Li Jiangguo's mouth twitched. Inside. He cursed Zhao Xiang relentlessly. Inside the room. Li Mo watched the commotion outside through the reflective observation port. The peephole had changed completely after the upgrade. The exposed glass panel was hidden away, leaving them no way to damage it. Li Mo felt no concern at all. Li Mo picked up the empty water bottle and filled it with urine. Liang Yun quickly turned her head away, yet stole curious glances from the corner of her eye. Her cheeks flushed, her mind filled with questions. Li Mo paid no mind to Liang Yun's flustered state. He held the bottle full of liquid, pinched his nose, and shook it gently, a sly grin spreading across his face. Aiming at the crowd gathered outside the door, he poured its contents straight out through the observation window. Before the plan advanced, liquid poured through the assault window and drenched Zhao Xiang's entire group. The attackers recognized the foul-smelling humiliation and immediately lost every trace of discipline. Another man yelled out in shock. One lackey had a naturally weak sense of smell. At first, he mistook it for some kind of drink, and nausea crashed over him only once he realized what it was. Li Jiangguo drew the worst luck. Most of the liquid splashed across his face, some even slipping into his mouth. A sharp, acrid stench flooded his nostrils. His stomach churned violently, and he vomited everything, including the dry bread he had eaten the previous day. Inside the room, Li Mo laughed so hard he slapped the sofa, watching the chaotic scene outside. Yet, when he spotted the puddle of vomit by the doorway, his laughter faded. Blood and bodies in the corridor would vanish and reset each day. He wondered if this mess would disappear as well. If not, it would be utterly revolting. A shudder ran through Liang Yun. She could barely stand to imagine it. If she had been soaked like that, she would have retched until she fainted. Zhao Xiang trembled from head to toe, droplets of liquid still dangling from his hair. Never in his life had he endured such humiliation. He needed to change his clothes immediately. If he stayed any longer, he feared he would start vomiting, too. Breaking down the door was the last thing on his mind. They watched Zhao Xiang's party flee in disgrace, struggling to hold back their smiles. They harbored no fondness for Li Mo, but Zhao Xiang's constantly robbed everyone's supplies. Seeing him suffer such a loss filled them with quiet satisfaction. Li Jiangguo was drained from vomiting, his face deathly pale. Li Jiangguo approached the others after cleaning himself, but the lingering odor forced everyone away. Humiliation deepened his hatred of Li Mo, even though his own betrayal had caused the disaster. If he vomited once more, there would be nothing left but bile. 1 hour later, on the open ground at the edge of the gray mist, Li Jiangguo had cleaned himself as best he could, but the unpleasant scent lingered. Information from Zhao Xiang's scouts revealed a ruined city beyond the thinning gray mist. Zhao Xiang's scouts reported that safer treasure chests waited near the city's outer ruins. Though valuable loot would be scarce, their earlier encounter with the chainsaw-wielding monster was likely just terrible luck. To obtain rare treasures, they would have to venture deeper into the fog. There must be someone with a special talent within their ranks. Still, he knew their intentions were malicious. Sharing this information for free was simply a way to send everyone out to gather supplies so they could keep paying tribute without dying off too soon. Put plainly, they were no different from livestock being raised for exploitation, but trapped under another's power. They had little choice in Meanwhile, inside the room, Li Mo was in an excellent mood. Not only had he drenched those men with his surprise, but he had also sold a great deal more canned meat in that short time, earning a steady stream of silver coins. He now held 1 gold coin and dozens of silver coins inside his system backpack. Li Mo took out the blueprint for a solar charging panel and planned to check the trading post for glass. Just then, a system notification suddenly popped up. Solar panels can be integrated with level 2 windows. Directly craft and merge them. Li Mo raised an eyebrow. He had been thinking that once he manufactured solar panels, they would have to be placed outdoors. He never expected they could be combined with windows, which would save him plenty of trouble. He first glanced at the system shop. The items refreshed today were all low-quality goods, not worth his attention. He casually opened the trading post and browsed through listings. High price for spirit crystals. Blueprint electric double bed. Li Mo paused when he saw the last listing. Waiting for others to list glass was too slow, so he immediately posted 3 bounty offers, buying all blueprints related to electrical equipment at high prices. Shortly after he posted them, a system notification popped up. To Li Mo's surprise, the person reaching out was Wang Buin, who had added him as a friend earlier. Li Mo was surprised. He hadn't thought he could get over a dozen pieces all at once. Li Mo received 14 pieces of glass. Looking toward the tall buildings, faintly visible in the distance, Li Mo replied. Li Mo stared at the messages, lost in thought. Staying cooped up in his room, information from the outside world was extremely valuable to him. Without further delay, he upgraded his wooden window to level 2, then selected solar panel fabrication and completed the integration. Following the system prompts, a faint light flickered and the crude wooden window transformed instantly. Solar-powered glass window level 2, glass X, 2 wood planks. 3. The upgraded glass window continuously harvested solar energy while preserving a clear view of the city. Li Mo's mood brightened as he looked at the clear, transparent glass replacing the old window. Hardly any trace of the integrated solar panel could be seen. Through the glass, he spotted a large crowd gathered on the open space downstairs. Groups of people squatted on the ground, all covered in grime. Several bloodied survivors were dragged out of the gray mist and laid on the ground, groaning in pain. Li Mo let out a quiet scoff and looked away. Others risked their lives outside just to scrape together a mouthful of food, while he steadily accumulated resources from canned goods and safety. This gap between them would only keep growing wider. He reopened the trading post, found the blueprint for the electric double bed, and purchased it for 2 silver coins. It was the only electrical blueprint available on the market right now. The design looked like something straight out of a boutique hotel, complete with electric adjustment functions. It was truly unexpected. Liang Yun had just finished sorting the canned food. She turned around and caught sight of the new bed. She blinked, walked over slowly, slipped off her high heels, and lay down directly on top. Propping her head up on one elbow, she stretched out comfortably, her legs dangling slightly over the edge of the bed. She looked toward Li Mo with a soft smile. The sight stirred Li Mo, though he knew this woman only liked to tease playfully and would grow flustered if things went too far. But he was no saint. Survival struggles had occupied all his attention before, yet now, protected behind his level 4 door, he felt far more at ease. Watching Liang Yun's playful demeanor, he made a mental note to test just how durable this bed was against his strengthened physique. Later that night, he pushed the thought aside temporarily and turned toward the window, wondering how to connect power to the bed. Suddenly, faint light blue dotted lines appeared before his eyes. One end linked to the solar glass window while the other stretched gently toward the bed. Li Mo blinked in surprise. He connected the line to the bed. In the next instant, the stationary bed shuddered softly. It slowly began to rise and fall with a subtle, steady vibration, rippling the mattress beneath Liang Yun. Liang Yun was still propped up on her elbow. She jolted from the unexpected movement, nearly slipping. Once she realized the bed was shifting on its own, pink blush spread across her cheeks and ears. She sat up and adjusted her clothing. Meanwhile, on the first floor lobby, Zhao Xiang walked out of his room after changing into clean clothes. Yet, his expression remained dark enough to drip. He had never endured such humiliation. A coward hiding behind a door had doused him head to toe with urine, but the level 4 iron door stood firm. Fire axes could not scratch it, so a direct assault was impossible. Zhao Xiang sat in a chair, tapping his blade repeatedly against the tea table as his mind raced. A cold smirk tugged at his lips. If he could not break the door down, there was no need to here. Sheng Shangbo hurried over, still nursing a dull ache on the back of his head. Zhao Xiang spoke slowly and calmly. Go spread word to everyone in the building. Tell them there's a man named Li Mo on the 15th floor with massive stockpiles of supplies, yet he refuses to pay any protection fees. Also tell them because of his selfish refusal, the resource quota each floor must hand over will rise by an additional 10th. Jiang Bo immediately admired the plan to redirect the residents' anger away from Zhao Xiang. Zhao Xiang's messenger admired the plan to redirect the building's anger toward one successful survivor. He clapped Jiang Bo on the shoulder. Go pass this information to every floor. Jiang Bo spread the rumor across the building before anyone could challenge its original source. Xiao Xiang sat back down, wiping the surface of his blade. The messenger spread the false explanation across every floor before residents could question its source. He understood human nature all too well. They did not truly hate Li Mo for possessing supplies. They hated the unfairness of watching him live comfortably while they struggled. If they believed every extra resource they surrendered was Li Mo's fault, they would never direct their anger towards Xiao Xiang, the one seizing their goods. Li Mo Xiao Xiang whispered the name and broke into a grim laugh. Soon, an invisible storm swept through the high-rise. At first, everyone received news of the increased resource levy, leaving them stunned. The quota had climbed to 40% of all their gains, a demand that made survival nearly impossible. Just as they prepared to confront Xiao Xiang, they learned the supposed cause. A man named Li Mo was to blame for all their suffering. Tension thickened inside the building. Many residents lingered near the 15th floor, casting hostile glances upward. Inside Li Mo's room, Liang Yun browsed the public chat channel for intelligence. There's someone loaded beyond belief in the city zone, sitting on mountains of supplies. Li Mo rumor says he lives in complete luxury. Public chat dismissed some reports as gossip, while repeating increasingly extravagant claims about Li Mo. The wildest rumor described his fortified survival room as an effortless vacation home. Liang Yun stared at the messages in shock. Public chat soon described Li Mo as someone enjoying a vacation while everyone else starved. Liang Yun recognized that the rumor campaign was too coordinated to be accidental. A private warning from Bai Mingming confirmed that the entire building was turning against Li Mo. Bai Mingming, Sister Liang. Rumors are spreading that Li Mo is the reason everyone must pay extra supplies. Bai Mingming's private message confirmed the growing danger. The healer urged Liang Yun to remain cautious, because angry residents now blamed their increased tribute on Li Mo. Someone was deliberately spreading slander to target Li Mo. She quickly turned to Li Mo. Liang Yun carried the warning across the room with anxiety visible in every movement. Li Mo was rummaging through a storage crate. He did not lift his head, pulling out 2 cups of milk tea and handing one to Liang Yun. Li Mo immediately identified Xiao Xiang's strategy, yet continued preparing milk tea without concern. He dismissed the rumors because angry residents with broken weapons could not threaten his reinforced room. Liang Yun felt some of her worry ease. She took a sip of the milk tea and closed her eyes contentedly. A heavy impact sounded against the glass. Li Mo frowned and stepped over to the window. Downstairs, people were hurling stones at his window. Residents below hurled stones while accusing Li Mo of hoarding supplies and causing their suffering. Li Mo closed the damaged window and activated another upgrade before the crowd could celebrate. Cracks vanished as the glass thickened, leaving the exhausted stone throwers staring upward in disbelief. The level 3 solar window generated 5 power units hourly and stored more than 100 units. The instant upgrade made the mob believe attacks somehow strengthened Li Mo's property. That mistaken conclusion made his untouched defenses seem even more impossible to defeat. While they argued, Li Mo appeared at the window. He twirled a cup of milk tea slowly in one hand, resting his other casually on Liang Yun's waist. Li Mo rested his hand gently on Liang Yun's waist and raised his cup toward the seething crowd below. With less than 90 minutes before nightfall, Xiao Xiang watched from below and wanted everything inside. Greed fixed Xiao Xiang's attention on the food, upgraded room, renewable power, and Liang Yun. His urge to seize everything Li Mo owned burned hotter than ever. He could not stop staring at the woman beside Li Mo. Most women trapped in this apocalypse rarely had the chance to clean themselves and were covered in dirt. His attention shifted toward Bai Mingming, another valuable woman whose healing talent could support his faction. Bai Mingming's beauty and healing talent made her Xiao Xiang's next intended target. With less than 1 hour before dusk, Chen Yao returned alone from the gray mist with fresh injuries. Without teammates to watch her back in the fog, she relied on her concealment talent to evade multiple monsters and reaped decent rewards. Yet, she had sustained injuries. When she found Bai Mingming, the younger girl gasped in shock. Chen Yao handed over some supplies as thanks. Bai Mingming immediately activated her healing talent. Soft light washed over Chen Yao, mending most of her wounds. Shortly afterward, Lu Jun and his team rushed out from the gray mist. Luck favored them this trip. The returning scavengers lost their excitement after learning how much additional tribute Xiaoxiang demanded before they could protest. The tyrant gathered everyone and presented himself as the building's defender. A loyal follower amplified Xiaoxiang's speech, while skeptical residents recognized the manipulation. Jiangbo repeated the speech, while the frightened crowd searched desperately for reassurance. Xiaoxiang promised protection, but secretly planned to use the gathered residents as disposable fighters. As darkness approached, weapons tightened in shaking hands, and reckless confidence drained away. Unease returned as darkness approached, but fear of Xiaoxiang kept most residents in the lobby. The fleeting surge of recklessness stirred up earlier had long faded in the face of looming life or death danger. Bai Mingming remained near Chen Yao, hoping her healing light could preserve the stealth fighter. Bai Mingming admired Chen Yao's courage while accepting that her own talent belonged behind the fighters. Chen Yao refused to hide because defeating monsters remained her clearest path toward strength. Bai Mingming retreated to her room once the countdown reached 0 and the building darkened. Xiaoxiang drew his blade and drove the crowd toward shadows gathering beside the staircase. Twisted figures appeared simultaneously on every floor, transforming the building into a vertical hunting ground. The first lobby creature combined a humanoid torso with long rabbit ears and enormous bloodshot eyes. A crimson mouth split its distorted face, while oversized paws scraped against the tile on the 15th floor. Li Mo watched another rabbit-headed monster climb into his corridor. Moonlight revealed the creature feeding on a fallen resident with a long, flexible tongue. Li Mo frowned and kept watching. Inside the corridor, the two figures stood in an unnatural posture. A man knelt before the rabbit-eared creature, and strange wet sounds echoed through the silent night. Li Mo stared at the unsettling sight, his mind struggling to process what he saw. A shaft of moonlight streamed into the hallway, and he finally saw clearly. Those were not human figures at all. It was a monster with a rabbit's head. It stretched out its long, supple tongue, slowly draining the man's brain matter. Those wet, slurping noises were the sounds of the monster feeding. Li Mo twitched his eyes. The gruesome sight sent a strong jolt through him. He pulled back his gaze and noticed the rabbit-headed monster carried no weapon. Li Mo felt a measure of relief. His door was now level 4. Mere flesh and claws would never break through it. Li Mo calmly returned to the sofa and picked up the black diamond truffle ice cream set before him. In his old world, he could never have afforded something like this. After enjoying the treat for a moment, he turned to look at Liang Yun, who sat on the bed. He planned to test just how durable the large bed frame was tonight. When Liang Yun met Li Mo's gaze, her cheeks flushed. She knew this moment had finally arrived. She had steeled her resolve the day she stepped into Li Mo's room. Yet, her heart still raced with nervousness. A tender atmosphere filled the room, starkly contrasting the terror lurking outside. She watched Li Mo draw closer and had to admit his appearance fit perfectly with her preferences. Her eyelashes trembled as she slowly closed her eyes and reached out, only for Li Mo to stop her. Elsewhere, tension in the ground floor lobby had reached its peak. Xiaoxiang scanned the crowd and noticed them subtly inching backward. His expression darkened instantly. He grabbed Qin Luhuan, who was attempting to flee, and dropped all pretenses. His blade pierced straight through her body. Blood sprayed outward, shocking the crowd rigid. The survivors gritted their teeth. At once, dozens of people raised their weapons and rushed toward the rabbit-headed monster. In the next second, disaster struck. The man leading the charge's vision blurred abruptly. The rabbit-headed monster that had stood motionless was gone without warning. Chills raced down his spine. A cold sensation washed over the back of his neck. A powerful gust of air swept past. He stiffly twisted his head and saw a pair of bulging, blood-red eyes fixed upon him. Lower down, the creature's fluffy, massive paws rested atop a headless corpse, warm blood still dripping onto the ground. The rabbit-headed monster lifted a paw, licked the blood and tissue from its fingers. As if savoring a delicious meal, it had crushed the man's skull in an instant. Screams exploded inside the lobby. The already terrified survivors completely broke down. They turned and fled, wailing. The sharp stench of blood gradually filled the space. Many people exposed their backs to the monster. The outcome was inevitable. Death. Panic only brought faster death. Calm was the only path to survival. He twisted his body to endure a sweeping strike and dragged a terrified, paralyzed survivor out of harm's reach. The man shakily stood. A claw had torn open a deep wound, exposing bone. He gritted his teeth and made no sound. He never forgot his ambition. He continued winning over others. He believed Zhao Xiang had no right to lead them. He was the one who deserved to be the leader. Zhao Xiang stood behind his followers, his pupils shrinking. He had not expected the monster to move so swiftly. Still, this worked to his advantage. These cannon fodder had tested its abilities for him, letting him spot its pattern. He realized the rabbit-headed monster could unleash a high-speed rush only once every few minutes. It enters a weakened state after each rapid assault. Strike while it recovers. Shaken, but rekindled. The crowd surged forward again, unleashing all manner of talent abilities against the monster. Zhao Xiang ordered his slowing specialist to restrict the rabbit monster and create one decisive opening. Thanks to this ability, Zhao Xiang's group had wiped out all monsters on their original floor. The rabbit-headed monster, about to pounce once more, suddenly seized up. This was the opening Xiao waited for. He pushed through the crowd and lunged forward, sweeping his long blade hard toward the monster's neck. The fluffy rabbit head rolled across the floor. Silver coins, spirit crystals, and scattered supplies spilled across the ground. Some collapsed to their knees, overcome with fear. Zhao Xiang wiped blood splattered across his face, making him look even more menacing. He watched the notification showing he had gained 30 experience points and grinned. The large group advanced floor by floor along the stairwell. Zhao Xiang directed the crowd to attack every monster they encountered. Yet, he made certain to land the killing blow for most of the experience. Zhao Xiang conserved stamina for critical openings while forcing ordinary residents to absorb most attacks. A small number of kills fell to other survivors, relying on his stealth talent. Chen Yao drifted through the chaos to land finishing blows, quietly advancing to level 2. By now, the crowd fought with bloodlust in their eyes. Elsewhere, a faint, unusual scent lingered in the room. Li Mo lay on the bed. Beside him, Liang Yun had fallen fast asleep, yet she clung tightly to him like an octopus. He stared blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. Inside the fortified room, Liang Yun finally fell asleep while Li Mo waited for midnight. The new AFFIX promised one disposable clone each day, with another active slot unlocked every 5 levels. Each clone inherited half of Li Mo's attributes and could be controlled as naturally as his main body. A replacement clone could appear only after the previous body died, preventing unlimited simultaneous copies. Even with that limit, Li Mo had effectively received renewable extra lives for exploration and combat. His first activation created a young female clone and divided his awareness between 2 bodies. The result effectively granted renewable extra lives, completely changing the risk of future exploration. Li Mo tested both viewpoints until the disorienting split began feeling natural. One perspective remained inside the room, while the other belonged to the female body facing him. The clone inherited half his attributes and accessed the same system storage as his main body. Shared storage meant anything collected outside could transfer home instantly without a return journey. That connection also allowed Li Mo to remove valuable equipment before a damaged clone died. The possibilities turned every dangerous expedition into a problem solvable with expendable bodies. A rabbit-headed monster still patrolled the corridor, offering an immediate combat test. Li Mo armed the female clone with the stolen cleaver and opened the reinforced gate. Unlike his cautious main body, this temporary fighter had no reason to preserve itself. The clone stepped outside while the rabbit creature stood with its back exposed. The rabbit monster's neck twisted completely around as its bloodshot eyes locked onto the female clone. Seeing the creature up close made its distorted face even worse, but fear carried no real cost. Li Mo steadied the clone with both perspectives active and raised the stolen cleaver. The rabbit monster vanished from its original position before the clone could begin her attack. The monster crossed the corridor almost instantly and smashed the clone backward. Her left arm cracked beneath the impact, yet the main body received only muted pain. That reduced sensation allowed the clone to keep fighting through damage that would stop a normal survivor. Li Mo stared at the rabbit-headed monster and wore a faint, eerie smile. Humans were incapable of unleashing their full strength, largely due to pain. The human brain held back muscle output as a protective mechanism. Without the restraint of pain, even an ordinary person could shatter concrete with a single blow. Limo raised the cleaver, supporting herself with her injured left shoulder, and charged forward again. She closed in on the rabbit-headed monster and brought the blade crashing down. To Limo's surprise, the monster reacted half a beat too late. The blade sliced through the air and severed one of its ears. Stung by the injury, the rabbit-headed monster let out a furious shriek. It pushed off the ground and charged in a wild assault. After 2 rounds of combat, Limo had figured out its pattern. Without hesitation, she let her wounded left arm absorb the monster's attack. The rabbit-headed monster sank its fangs straight into her arm. Sharp teeth pierced deep into flesh. Limo sacrificed the wounded arm to trap the creature's jaws and expose its neck. The rabbit head tumbled onto the floor, its jaws still clamped onto half of Limo's severed arm. Beneath the moonlight, blood and a broken arm stained the corridor, forming a chilling scene. The clone wrapped her severed forearm quickly because blood loss could still end the temporary body. Pain was muted, yet excessive blood loss could still kill her. She intended to squeeze every last bit of use from this clone. With pain reduced and death acceptable, Limo intended to extract every remaining advantage from the clone. Her fingertips brushed against a cold silver ingot. She picked it up and realized it was steel. Iron dropped from this monster. After collecting all supplies, Limo headed toward the staircase. Loud commotion drifted upward from the lower floors through gaps in the stairs. Limo thought it over and chose not to descend. Instead, she climbed higher. With her new experience, fighting these mindless monsters became effortless. Coupled with her fearless fighting style, she treated this clone like a disposable combat unit. Repeated kills pushed Limo to level 4, while steel and other valuable resources accumulated inside shared storage. His constitution now reached 4 an average adults, although the disposable body was nearly destroyed. By the 20th floor, the clone had lost 1 eye and 1 foot, but continued moving. Blood seeped from one sunken eye socket, and her right foot was severed at the ankle. She leaned shakily on the cleaver, her clothing torn and her body covered in wounds. A beam of morning sunlight slanted over her figure, as if shining on a battle-worn warrior returning from war. Limo coughed up blood, stared at the crimson fluid in her palm, and shook her head helplessly. The system announced that monsters would become stronger and would no longer appear, only at fixed nightly intervals. Phase 2 began as the gray mist withdrew and fixed nightly monster spawning ended. Future disasters would include extreme cold, scorching heat, floods, and other unpredictable weather. Only then did everyone understand that the previous horrors belonged to a protected beginner phase. The building expanded to 30 floors while additional survivors appeared throughout the new sections. Xiaoxiang regretted that dawn interrupted his hunt before he could secure more finishing blows. The dying clone used the newly appeared elevator to reach a rooftop filled with confused survivors. Before dying, the clone transferred every valuable item into the shared backpack and retained only 1 piece of wood. She lowered herself against a wall as the last strength drained from her damaged body. Moments later, the female clone collapsed while Limo observed from complete safety below. Limo confirmed that the dead clone dropped nothing important, making future scouting dramatically safer. The experiment proved that a clone could die far away without costing his main body equipment or resources. Liang Yun awakened as Limo finished comparing the clone's death with his untouched storage. Nothing valuable appeared beside the corpse, confirming that shared equipment remained protected after death. Liang Yun dressed quickly and joined Limo beside the upgraded solar window. The monsters had vanished for morning, but their fixed schedule had disappeared permanently. The gray fog had lifted, exposing countless ruined skyscrapers across the silent city. Liang Yun initially welcomed the morning until Limo explained why the new freedom increased danger. Without predictable monster drops, every survivor now needed to leave home and search the city. Limo concluded that future progress required controlled expeditions rather than complete isolation. Without scheduled monster drops, the ruined city became the only reliable source of rare blueprints. Liang Yun joined him at the window and studied the exposed streets with growing concern. Together, they began planning which renewable supplies could support exploration during extreme weather. Cold, heat, and floods would punish unprepared survivors. But Limo already possessed layered protection. Every coming shortage would also increase the value of food produced endlessly inside his safe room. Just then, the cross-eyed rat hopped onto Limo's shoe and tilted its head to look up at him. He suddenly remembered that his spirit power had already reached 4 points. He no longer needed to summon just one rat. Limo focused his mind. A flash of white light appeared. Limo understood that the easy opening phase had ended exactly when his strongest tools became available. The empty room that once offered one bottle of water now held food, power, weapons, furniture, and a loyal companion. His first night had forced him to hide behind wood while one monster controlled the corridor. Now a disposable clone had crossed multiple floors and hunted those same nightmares for experience. The gray mist no longer imprisoned him because the ruined city had finally become visible. Extreme weather would threaten everyone. Yet his solar window, stored food, and reinforced gate gave him preparation time. Liang Yun studied the exposed skyline and accepted that passive survival would no longer be enough. Li Mo agreed. But fear never entered his calculation. Every disaster created shortages, and every shortage increased the value of his renewable supplies. Every dangerous expedition could be assigned to a clone, sharing his inventory. Every midnight promised another permanent AFFIX that might break the rules even further. The team and shared residence systems also created a path for carefully chosen allies. He would not invite strangers merely because the new feature allowed it. Anyone entering his home would need usefulness, loyalty, and a reason worth protecting. Cross-eyed Mouse climbed onto his shoe while the survivors outside argued over the new rules. Its appearance reminded Li Mo that 4 spirit points could strengthen his strange animal summoning AFFIX. He focused on the creature, ready to test another improvement before the city awakened. The rat vanished in the flash, confirming that even his earliest abilities still had room to evolve. Beyond the upgraded glass, desperate residents prepared to enter streets filled with stronger monsters. Inside, the only true safe zone, Li Mo calmly prepared to make the apocalypse supply him.